Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jai Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Yasodanandana Raja Janahanjaya Yasodanandana Raja Janahanjaya Jamuna Tira Havana Jamuna Tira Havana Jamuna Madhava faster no Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Gopi Girivardhari Jai Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Gopi Hiri Yasodanandana Raja Janahanjaya Yasodanandana Raja Janahanjaya Jamuna Tira Havana Jamuna Tira Havana Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Rama Hare Rama Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Nitai Gaur, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Nitai Gaur, Nitai Gaur, Hare Bol, Hare Bol, Hare Bol, Hare Bol, Gauda Hari, Gauda Hari, Nitai Gaur, Hare Bol, Hare Bol, Hare Bol, Hare Bol, Gauda Hari, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jai Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jai Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna Mahamantra ki jai. Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're reading from Canto 8, chapter number 3. Chapter's entitled Gajendra's Prayers of Surrender. This is verse number 10. Nama Atma Pradipaya Shakshine Paramatmane Namo Giram Viduraya Mananas Chaitasam Api Nama Atma Pradipaya Saksine Paramatmane Namo Giram Viduraya Mananas Chaitasam Api Nama Atma Pradipaya Saksine Paramatmane Namo Giram Viduraya Manasas Chaitasam Api. Ladies. Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances. Atma Pradipaya. Unto He who is self-effulgent, or who gives enlightenment to the living entities. Shakshine, who is situated in everyone's heart as a witness. Paramatmane, unto the Supreme Soul, the Super Soul. Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances. Giram, by words. Who is impossible to reach. Manasa, by the mind. Chaitasam, or by consciousness. Api, even. So translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the self-effulgent Super Soul, who is the witness in everyone's heart, who enlightens the individual soul and who cannot be reached by exercises of the mind, words, or consciousness. Srila Prabhupada's purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna cannot be understood by the individual soul through mental, physical, or intellectual exercises. It is by the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead that the individual soul is enlightened. Therefore, the Lord is described here as Atma Pradipa. The Lord is like the sun, which illuminates everything and cannot be illuminated by anyone. Therefore, if one is serious about understanding the Supreme, one must receive enlightenment from Him as instructed in the Bhagavad Gita. One cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead by one's mental, physical, or intellectual powers. Om Agyan Timmirandasya Gyanajana Salakaya Chaksu Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Staptitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadam Mayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shiguro Shiyuta Padekamalam Shigurun Vaishnavamscha Sirupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sarvadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakam Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Suti Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vancha Kalpa Tarubhischa Kripa Sindhu Pyevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namaho Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So from the beginning of this chapter and continuing on for many verses, Gajendra, who finds himself in a very dangerous and life-threatening situation, calls out to the Supreme Lord with great feeling. And it's amazing that although he's in such a precarious situation, he's offering such beautiful and eloquent and most completely perfect prayers of glorification of the Lord. And this particular prayer, here he's glorifying Krishna as the super soul, who is the indwelling Paramatma within the hearts of all living entities, who is the witness, who is self-effulgent, who needs no other effulgence outside of himself. He's perfect. He's cannot be reached. This is, I think, the main point in this particular verse, which is emphasized both in the translation and in Srila Prabhupada's purport, as Krishna is beyond the reach. Atasi Krishna namari nambhavedrayam India sevamukhi jivadas swayameva sparatyada. Srila Prabhupada would often quote this verse to help us understand that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is not within the range of anything material. And even though one may be qualified in all categories of intellectual prowess and abilities, still Krishna is transcendental. He's what we say, he works at his own sweet will. He's not, what we say, available through the power of one's even empower one's devotional service. But he does say, Bhakti yamam avijananti yamam yasvi tatvataha, that actually by devotional service then, only then, is the means for reaching me. But then, even when one is engaged in devotional service, still Krishna reserves the right to reveal himself accordingly. And here we are in the month of Kartik, and we very much, every day we're singing the beautiful pastimes of Lord Damodar, and how he was chased and eventually not caught, but permitted to be caught by his mother. He was not caught, but he decided to show some compassion and what we say concern for his mother's tremendous effort. She's a pure devotee. She only has love for Krishna. Her only concern is the welfare of Krishna. She'll make any personal sacrifice to serve the Lord in the most best and most loving way. But still, it wasn't until Krishna decided to get caught was he caught. Although she had pure devotional service. So Krishna's teaching by this particular pastime, and there's many other principles that is being illustrated in this pastime. But one thing is that he reserves the right to descend into the hearts and lives of his devotee according to when he wants. But still, he's attracted by pure, loving, devotional service. Prabhupada makes a nice point in the earlier verses of this particular section, wherein he says that one of the qualifications that made it available for Gajendra to actually access the mercy of the Lord is he had somehow remembered and chanted perfectly the glories of the Lord, and by chanting beautiful mantras which he had somehow learned in his previous life. Somehow in this dangerous situation, when everything else there was nothing else he could call out to. He's an elephant. He's glorified for having devotion in such a, what we say, a unusual body, such as, we have Hanuman, we have Gajendra, and we have other examples of those in the other species of life who somehow or other are able to access the mercy of the Supreme Personality of God. But he remembered his past life. Or at least he remembered the mantra that he was taught in his past life when he was chanting in devotional service. And Prabhupada said he was a human, but somehow he had, whatever he did, to assume such a, what we say, different type of body. We might even consider it lower on the evolutionary scale. Still, he got the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead by perfectly chanting these mantras. And it was interesting, because when Prabhupada makes this point, he makes the point clear that one should perfect the chanting of the mantra. Therefore, especially, and he mentions that chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra is, of course, our mantra for perfection. But he also says one should perfect another prayer for mantra, along with our chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. And then he gives just an example. He chants a mantra from the Brahma Samhita prayers, like that. So chanting mantras, chanting nicely. In 1972, in Japan, Srila Prabhupada gave a Bhagavatam class. And he did something which was quite rare, and of course at the time was unusually rare. He spent 45 minutes instructing the devotees how to chant the Sanskrit from the particular verse he was chanting. And he went back over it and made sure everyone carefully was chanting the pronunciation perfectly. And he didn't stop until that perfect pronunciation of that verse was gotten by every devotee who was sitting there listening to Prabhupada's class. Now you might think, oh, well, Krishna is Bhava Grahi Janardana. But he takes the essence. So even if a child in broken language, but with complete intentions, chants not, what we say, not perfectly, but his intention is perfect, and Krishna will accept. We also hear that. So we hear something that is contrary in one sense. But Prabhupada also writes, so you get the chance to understand both of these dynamics within a certain context. Prabhupada also writes that in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, he specially emphasizes the careful chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, where he criticizes, you could say the word criticizes, or he rejects any kind of chanting that is not what we say clear and very audible. And then he makes an example. He says, when you're chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, you should use the upper and lower lips and sound the name very clearly, avoiding the hissing sound. And that's from Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Lila, chapter 17, verse number 32 in the purport. So you don't find too many verses or purports like that where Prabhupada just talks about that. But occasionally he does. So in this particular, what we say, series of prayers here, it's also mentioned in the early verses in the purport. Prabhupada says one should perfectly learn how to chant the mantras like that. I mean, His Holiness Lokanath Maharaj has written a book, Chant It Properly. Pronounce it properly like that. So recently the GBC, I'm not getting into organizational principles here, but I think I just mentioned, the GB said, okay, we've been going on long enough. How many years our society's been going? Let's get the devotees to chant things rightly. You know, I know certain devotees who don't even chant the Sanskrit because coming from certain countries and having some maybe linguistic difficulties in pronouncing, they avoid that. But Prabhupada was very, what we say, in other words, in order to show the authority to people in general and not look like something, because when you're around certain personalities who have the knowledge of the chanting of the mantras, and it's not being chanted properly, we'll look like something less. But Prabhupada really emphasized more the chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra over any of the main mantras for chanting, but he also wanted other mantras chanted nicely. So making that point here is that Prabhupada said, Gajendra chanted in that way. He chanted with such feeling and such perfection that as soon as his mantra left his heart and mind, he actually realized the presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his heart. It was so beautifully and so perfectly chanted. So he actually, and of course the Lord appeared to him and saved him from his dangerous position. So, but here, Prabhupada constantly wants us to understand that by our own efforts, devotional service is not achievable. So it's by the grace and mercy of the Lord. So what is the value of our efforts? It's explained that there's two elements within the process of devotional service that make up the effort that we make. One is the ingredients and one is the mood. The ingredients is following the instructions of the spiritual master accordingly and acting in such a way that those instructions become the focus of every activity we perform, even if it's a small thing. What would be an example of a small thing? Prabhupada said, if you come into a dirty place and you leave it the same way as you see it, you are in the mode of ignorance. He said, therefore you should make some effort to make it a little better. He said, you're the same consciousness as the place. That means if you don't see any need for change. So this is a small thing. You might say it's very kind of like minuscule. But making all the instructions of the spiritual one master more or less a focus of our consciousness makes the more important ones more focusable in our life. In other words, if we take the little things serious, we will all take the things that are most important. And one of the things that are most important is to every day chant 16 rounds on beads without fail, Prabhupada said. When he was asked that instruction, when he was asked the question, Srila Prabhupada, what is your most important instruction to your disciples? He emphasized that main point. He said, chant 16 rounds on beads without fail. So he gives the essential principle. And we all know that. We've heard that so many times. But by emphasizing the smaller things, we have a tendency to also take the bigger things as what we say foundationals for the form of a meditation on the instructions of the spiritual master, like that. So the ingredients are there, but what makes the ingredients work? Just like if you go into a laboratory, if you want to make an experiment using various chemicals and you're mixing them together, if you have all the chemicals and the ingredients, but the laboratory conditions are not favorable to the experiment comes out less favorable, or maybe even not at all. So the favorable mood in devotional service is mentioned by Srila Rupa Goswami, Ayabila Sita Sunya Jnana Kamanavitam Anukulena Krishna Silanam Bhakti Uttamam. What is he saying? He's saying that devotional service is only successful when we follow these principles. And what is those principles? That no personal motivation. How do we get rid of personal motivation? Is there a means? You can't say, well, I'm not a pure devotee yet, so what do I do in execution of pure devotional service? So Prabhupada gives an interesting statement in this regard. He says that there are two kinds of pure devotees. One who is pure in heart and has achieved perfection through the process of pure devotional service, and those who develop pure intention in all the execution of devotional service. And he says, even though I'm not a pure devotee, and still I may have the material desires there, therefore I only act on the principles of pure devotional service and do not act in regard to whatever else is there. In other words, I follow strictly the instructions of the spiritual master and push aside any other personal considerations that may be still prominent within my existence. In other words, don't listen to the mind. Don't listen to the intelligence when it doesn't support transcendental knowledge or the instructions of the spiritual master. So that's a nice formula. He says then, one is a pure devotee by pure intention. And of course, by pure intention, one executes devotional service in that mood, and gradually, by not focusing on whatever else is there that is not in line with pure devotional service, then one frees themselves from material desires, material tendencies, like that. So that gives that as a way to move forward in our devotional service. Because sometimes I meet devotees, they say, well, devotional service is very wonderful, and the process is that, but I can't do it. It's too hard. I'm not qualified. Sometimes you hear that. I hear that, especially, maybe not in Mayapur so much, but I hear that a lot in traveling in different places around the world. People lose what we say, a sense of self in the execution of devotional service. And what it causes them is they somehow feel less enthusiastic, because they feel if I can't, I've already resolved within in my mind, I can't make it to pure devotional service, so why should I try? Let me find a compromise position somewhere below that level of perfection, and then I can be okay on that level. I can't be a pure devotee, so I'll be a happy mixed devotee. But that doesn't work. Why doesn't work? Because it's contrary to the principles of pure devotional service, in the sense that any lower position that one may surreptitiously accept as a position for execution causes you to go down to a lower position. So devotional service works in such a way as that if we're not moving forward, we're moving backward. If you're not making an effort to really perfect your devotional service in the execution of all activities, then the tendency is that one will again be afflicted by certain anarthas, which will cause one to again develop material desires and material tendencies like that. So one has to work hard. Devotional service is a very, what we say, spontaneous 24-hour effort to purify our heart and mind. And of course, here we have the example that Gajendra, he just, it's interesting. I guess maybe it's not interesting, it's more like natural. I think it's more, that's a better word, natural. That when you're in a difficult situation, you really try harder. When the difficulties come, reverses come, calamities come, sometimes even severe calamities like health crises, or sometimes you lose someone dear to you, or something happens that causes your mind to be very much disturbed. And then devotional service becomes a shelter. We run to the lotus feet of the Lord in great, looking for some relief, for some direction in that particular caused by that calamity. But Srila Prabhupada, and he makes this point over and over again, that simply by being in the material world, having a material body is a dangerous situation. So even though it may be nice, we're here in Mayapur, nice prasad, right? And nice kirtans, wonderful association. So many things are ideal here. One senior devotee said to Srila Prabhupada, it was Vishnu Jan Maharaj many years ago. He said, he was kind of like making a point that some devotees, they come to Mayapur to enjoy. So Prabhupada said, Vishnu Jan Maharaj said, we come to Mayapur, but we shouldn't try to enjoy. Prabhupada said, no, the Dham is for enjoyment. The Dham is for spiritual enjoyment, obviously. That doesn't need to be explained. But, so it is, yeah, it's a very enjoyable place, but still, we do have a material body. Or we have a body that is the cause of so many difficulties. So, understanding the precarious position, even within the Holy Dham, what means that one always takes shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in each and every situation. And therefore, the Padma Purana gives a very interesting statement. It's kind of like some people will think this is just some hyperbole, some exaggeration. But the statement is quite clear and quite to the point, and it says that to forget the Supreme Personality of Godhead for one moment, it starts off like that, the verse, is the greatest calamity, the greatest anomaly, and the greatest misfortune. To forget the Supreme Personality of Godhead for one moment, this is the actual understanding of the verse, is considered to be the worst possible thing that could happen to you. So my God, you might think, what is this verse trying to tell us? It's trying to make a point that the nature of the soul's existence is always to be serving the Lord in loving devotional service. And that service is always in consciously applying our intelligence, our mind, our senses, and whatever else we have in trying to serve the Lord in the best possible way, and remembering the Lord. And that is of course, that is what Rupa Goswami says is pure devotional service. So this verse from Padma Purana really makes the point that anything less than that means we still have to do some work. We still have to do some work. So calamities are there to help. When one is put into a calamitous or reverse situation in one's execution of devotional service, for a devotee, it kind of accelerates one's bhakti. It accelerates one's bhakti. It makes one realize that the things are not as, all of a sudden. So therefore, Krishna sometimes, many times, puts his devotees in difficult situations only so they can remember him more, with love and with feeling like that. Gajendra the elephant, he obviously is teaching us that, that by calling out to the Supreme Personality of Godhead with love and devotion, that is perfection. And of course, Krishna is very kind. Although Prabhupada makes this point throughout the verse, the Lord cannot be, what we say, reached by the power of the mind. He's beyond the mind. He's beyond the intelligence. And Prabhupada says, or even, the verse actually says, or even consciousness. Prabhupada says intellectual powers. Still, but Krishna is very kind. Krishna is very kind. And he responds to the devotee when the devotee sincerely calls out to him in love, like that. So this is the mindset of a devotee, how to develop that mood of always seeing oneself in a situation where I want to remember Krishna with devotion, with love. And that way one is always protected from the material energy and always one in the best possible situation. And chanting mantras, purifying our hearts in this way, brings our consciousness into that loving devotional mood more and more. Okay, so we have about 15 minutes left. Any questions or comments? Yes, Mahashakti, Mataji, Hare Krishna. Is that right? Mahalakshmi, okay, I'm sorry. Mahalakshmi.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj. We hear there are devotees, the neophyte devotees, they only see Krishna in the temple and in their own spiritual master, and the more one is advanced, the more one can see Krishna everywhere and in everyone. And you also mentioned about taking shelter of destructions of the spiritual master, especially those small ones. And in the desire to see Krishna everywhere, we may find other Vaishnavas who deserve all respect, and we may find that they may have different detail, which it might be contradictory.
Different.
How do we take shelter of Krishna? By just listening with respect? I don't think it's by retaliating, but sometimes happens. And or how do we take shelter of Krishna in such a circumstance?
The circumstance is, the situation it causes your mind to be disturbed rather than the question is, in a situation which is somewhat awkward, your mind is being disturbed?
One's spiritual master might have given a specific detail,
and
another Vaishnava may give a detail which is contradictory, or at least to one's capacity to see things.
Two different instructions which are contrary.
Yes, and we want to see Krishna in everyone. How do we take shelter of Krishna in such a circumstance? Just by respecting, not acting, by retaliating, which I think is not the way?
Let me see if I can understand. You have a spiritual master who's given you a certain instruction. You have an immediate authority who gives you another instructions which is a little contrary to what your spiritual master instructs. Is that it? Well, it's not like we have to blindly follow things. We can present our, what we say, confusion, and present that I'm understanding your instructions, but I understand from my spiritual master this is different. So you ask the question. So you inquire in a more of in a submissive way, not challenging, and you try to get a clarification. Now, if that person continues, then you might, it depends. I mean, if it's something like break the regulative principles, then you just don't follow, obviously. Taking shelter of Krishna means remembering Krishna and then acting according to the situation. So in this situation, you would inquire to get a clarification on what you should do or how you should properly act. We can do that. It's not that we have to follow instructions that are, what we say, either apparently contrary, or somewhat confusing and we can't understand it, or even maybe too difficult to execute without first inquiring how best I understand this, how best to execute it. That is allowable. But then once everything is responded, then you have to act. Yes, Prabhu.
Maharaj, just also in this regard, I had heard that the Shiksha Guru acts as an anga or limb of the Diksha Guru.
Yeah.
And the Shiksha Guru's instructions should support the instructions given by the Diksha Guru to enhance. Is that true, Maharaj?
Yeah, that's mentioned that if there's contrary, then one has to accept Diksha.
Thank you for clarifying that, Maharaj.
Yeah, that's mentioned. That's mentioned Chaitanya Charitamrita in the beginning. Right? But that's that's an etiquette of execution. That the Shiksha Guru, and sometimes we all of a sudden find ourselves getting instructions from someone who is not a Shiksha Guru, but someone who is in a process of authority or position of authority. Then again, you make that point. You inquire. Because you don't want to break the instructions of your spiritual master simply because of convenience. So the devotees have to be, what we say, aware of the instructions of their spiritual master. Srila Prabhupada, your spiritual master, in order so we make what we call committing an offense simply by unknowing. If we don't know the instructions and we go ahead and do something which is not in line with the instructions, thinking it is the instructions, then we will commit offense. That's why Prabhupada said, you must read my books. You must hear my lectures. You must understand this in practice, not only in theory.
Maharaj, generally I consider my authorities also on the platform of Shiksha Guru. So is a spiritual authority a Shiksha Guru in all cases, or are there differences?
Well, in this Gand we haven't adopted formal Shiksha, although there has been an effort to make it. So one can, what we say, accept on an informal way, a person who is going to be your Shiksha. But if someone who is not agreed to you by that, then you don't really have to accept. But if it's an authority, then you just question based on what the authority says. So we find ourselves, it says, Prabhupada in the Shastras say, one has one initiating spiritual master, but one may have many instructing in spiritual masters. You can have as many or as little as you feel like you need. And that's nice. That's nice. And that opens up opportunities for greater knowledge and greater, what we say, service. And of course, we understand that the Diksha Guru is not always available to give the instructions. Yes. There was a question, Sri Devi? Yeah.
Thank you, Maharaj. On the topic of pronunciation, I would like Your Holiness to just guide us on this point, because especially in the Western world, we see a lot of fanciful pronunciation, like Gaur Purnim, maybe because he was born under a neem tree or something.
It's
instead of
not Gaur Purnim, it's Gaur Purnima.
Right, right. I'm just illustrating. Or they say...
I got chastised. I said that one time, and one senior devotee immediately chastised me.
Oh.
And I never forgot that.
Yes,
And
Guru
that was
Maharaj.
at least 10 years ago.
Yeah, Gaur Purnima. Or they say Ishkan, because maybe Krishna, it's Krishna consciousness, so we say Ishkan. Or we say Ramo for Hare Rama, when like you explained in the Kirtan, Ramo and Krishna. So could you just tell us what happens when we mispronounce?
Tulasi. Two lassies. That's if you want one lassie or you want two lassies. So. Or maybe three lassies. It's Tulasi. Or Tulsi. It's not Tulasi. We say that all the time, right? Prabhupada in one lecture, he said, I know you are trying your best, but please don't call your spiritual master a cow. Vande Guru Shri Charanada Vindam. Vande Guru. It's Guru, not Guru. They were saying Guru. So Prabhupada, he said it very sweetly in a very somewhat jovial way. He said, please don't call your spiritual master a cow. I know you're trying your best. So yeah, so it's nice to get it down. In the beginning days of our movement, we were not talking about these things, but now it's become more of a feature of importance that we learn how to chant the mantras properly. Like that. Yes, Mataji. The microphone's on its way. Okay.
Hare Krishna, just one story regarding intent. We were in the back of the car with Srila Prabhupada. We were coming back from a morning walk, and one of our god sisters used to chant. She used to just like mumble, and she used to actually foam. She actually would foam at the mouth when she would chant, and we always used to sort of avoid her because her chanting was so incessant and so sort of crazy. So we're in the back of the car with Prabhupada, and she was chanting. And we were all thinking, oh, Srila Prabhupada's really going to, correct her on her chanting. And instead, Prabhupada turned around and go, very nice chanting. And we just all were like, flabbergasted. But it was sort of, the intent was there. She was like, worked herself into a frenzy. And that was his response.
And I think he also wanted to instruct the other devotees not to criticize her.
Yes, that was right. Yeah, Haribol.
Yeah. Yes, Lakshmi Moni Mataji.
Just in relation to Mahalakshmi Mataji's question at the beginning, sometimes apparently there's a contradiction, but if you understand the intention, then you can find a resolution.
Nice
So
point, yeah.
if you inquire to understand the intention, because sometimes the details of something in one circumstance or another circumstance may be one way, but then if you understand the whole intention, you may find that it applies in different ways in different circumstances.
So inquire about the intention rather than
The
what is
specifics,
actually...
yeah. Sometimes that helps.
Yeah. If once you get the intention, then you can understand everything else.
Yeah.
That's a nice point. Thank you. Very well. Thank you. Yeah, and I think Krishna consciousness really is based on intention. I think your story there about the chanting was that she intended to chant as much as she could in the best possible way she could, but maybe fell short of perfection, but her intention was to chant. Again, was there another question? Yes, Prabhu. Yeah.
There is different types of dandavats.
Different types of
Dandavats.
dandavats.
Offer obeisances. There are different types of offering obeisances. So which is the best and which dandavat is which purpose specified dandavat is used?
How best to pay obeisances? Well, they say 5-point and 11-point. That's dimensions. 11 points touching the floor, 11 points of the body, and 5 points of the body touching the floor. So both of those are considered, what we say, acceptable forms of. But your question is which one's better, or which is the. So I mean, if you try to pay full dandavats in the Radhamadhava temple, you might find a little bit of a problem sometimes. So you have to use your intelligence to see how best to offer your humble obeisances to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and His devotees. So either you use 5-point or 11-point, to seeing whatever is most appropriate for the situation. I think it really depends on your heart. Even if you offer full dandavat obeisances and you're thinking, I hope I don't get stepped on while you're down there, that's not much of an obeisance.
So why, I just say that, Prabhuji, why there are different kinds of dandavat?
Why?
Why there are, if this is the best, this one you say that best, then why there are different types of dandavat? In Odisha people say that holding like a rod, fell down just like a rod is the best one.
Why is it different kinds? Different types of people, I guess. I mean, ladies are not recommended to pay full dandavats. You don't find that very often. Prabhupada said they don't have to. They can do the 5-point dandavats. Prabhupada mentions that. So you just have to do a little research and see what is the origin of the shastras that talk about dandavats. I'm not exactly first on which one is better. I think they're both fine. And this, again, it's the feeling within the heart. Krishna said, Manmano bhava mad bhakto mam yaji mam namaskaru. Mahaprabhupada said, Nam namaskaru means offer your obeisances to the Lord. He doesn't say one is better than the other, or you can choose which type. Whatever works for you. Whatever works for you, best. There was another question? Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Krishna wants us to be happy by living in cooperation with Him, and the devotees who are trying to be surrendered.
The devotees are trying to?
Who are trying to be surrendered souls at His lotus feet. Sometimes they may want to mix the devotional service, and He puts them in difficulties so that He teaches. That He does to Arjuna. He becomes his guru.
Yeah, Prabhupada, I was just listening to Prabhupada speak about that. He said, just because you're a devotee, don't think you won't undergo difficulties.
Yeah, of course.
And then he uses the example of the Pandavas, how their wife was insulted, and how they were banished to the fires, how their kingdom was usurped, how they were tried to be killed in so many different ways. Prabhupada, making that point, said devotional service means ultimately to purify your heart. So you might find yourself in difficult situations. But again, what makes a difficult situation something different is when we surrender to the Lord in that situation. And we use that situation to become more Krishna conscious.
So my question was, Maharaj, that because Queen Kunti prays for difficulties, so she can think of Lord Krishna. That was her mood. But for an individual devotee, it can be another thing.
You want to pray like that too?
No.
I think there's enough difficulties in this world. We don't really have to pray for it. But if you want to, it's available.
No.
you can if you want.
I think most devotees' attitude would be to face the problems and not invite the problems.
Pray to purify your heart so you can become a better devotee. Pray that you can chant nicely. Pray that you can become more of a servant to the Vaishnavas. These are the prayers that are recommended. Pray that you can become an instrument of Prabhupada's mercy to spread Krishna consciousness to others. These are the prayers that are really helpful.
So we can we pray like this, that we face the problems by surrendering at your lotus feet in difficult times, and then
I missed one word in there. Can we pray for problems?
No. I was saying that can we pray in this way, that, O Lord Krishna, please let us take shelter of your lotus feet when we are in problems, but let us not invite problems. Because Queen Kunti is the example.
What book
Sometimes we misunderstand
what Shastra
her.
are you reading? It's not in the Bhagavatam. It's like we don't say, "My dear Lord, I really love you, but don't give me any difficulties." It sounds like a marriage vow. But it doesn't work. You know, whatever happens by way of either the Lord's arrangement or the Lord's permission. Krishna allows things to happen, not that he wants things to happen, but he allows it to happen, or makes things happen. He's the permitter also, and also one who makes things happen, and he also allows things to happen.
Yes, Maharaj.
So if he allows certain things to happen to us, even though he doesn't permit it, doesn't initiate it, we should accept that as our what we say, an opportunity for our spiritual advancement, an opportunity for purification.
Yes, Maharaj. Krishna is kind to his devotees.
Always.
But he's not kind to those who are not surrendered, who is atheist, who blasphemes
Krishna is
his
kind
devotees.
to everyone. Krishna is kind to everyone.
Yes,
but he shows his kindness in different ways. If he's a demon, he kills him. That's his kindness.
Yeah.
You can't say Krishna is unkind. He is kind. His kindness is beyond our understanding. But how he exhibits his kindness is different according to the circumstance. He's always kind. He's never unkind.
But he has his choices to be kind.
He wants you to be kind too. Yeah.
Thank you, Maharaj.
He becomes kind to you, so you learn how to become kind. Yes.
I understand.
This is the last question because I'm supposed to stop at 9 o'clock. And so.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for this wonderful class. Just my question was regarding, you said the principle of pure devotional service we hear from our spiritual master. And then even after knowing the principle, sometimes, as you said, there are like some kind of devotees who feel ki we can practice to a lower level.
Yeah.
But my point is, even after knowing that there are some kind of attachment, we want to surrender and our intentions are proper, but that is not reflecting immediately to our actions. So what is the controversy in this? Is the intention enough, or it should reflect in actions exactly?
Although we have good intentions, we try to surrender, still there's some imperfection, there's some flaw, still you try your best. You can't expect perfection on everything you do. You just do your best. What is your best? You try to serve the Lord in the best possible way. And what is that best possible way? You use your intelligence and you remember the instructions of the spiritual master. What can you do? The results are, Krishna says, you have a right to perform your duty, but you're not entitled to the results of action. Never consider yourself the cause of the results of your activities. Never be unattached, not attached to doing your duty. So you have to execute your devotional service, but the results are not up to you. Do your best. When Krishna takes he sees what you're trying to do as opposed to what is actually happening, like that. He sees your intention. That's why even so a person may be expert in executing a particular service, but they're proud or they have some motivation. Krishna is not going to accept that because their intention is different, although their expertise in execution is very nice. We may see it as very nice. Oh, this is so nice. But Krishna is seeing the intention or the motivation behind it. Like that. And there's many examples like that. One man, it was in Vrindavan, devotees invited him to come. He was a Brijabasi, and he came, and they said they wanted him to lead kirtan, so Prabhupada let him lead, and he was very beautiful chanting. But he was trying to impress others by the expertise of his chanting. Prabhupada stopped it, and I let someone else lead who couldn't sing at all. And Prabhupada was really enjoying this other devotee who was singing off key. And this other guy, this other Brijabasi, he was sitting there and he was really unhappy. Because all of a sudden he's taken off and this person who can sing is singing. But Prabhupada could understand that this other devotee, although he couldn't sing properly, he was trying his best to serve. And this other person was just trying to present himself as somebody who was, expert, and he was proud. He had some intentions like that. So the Lord can see that, the pure devotees can see that, So do your best. That's all. The problem is, when we start doing our best and we start becoming even a little bit good at what we're doing, that element of, I got it down now. Little pride starts to come in the executing of our service. And we put a lot of emphasis on the expertise rather than the mood of devotion. So that's important to understand. It's the mood of devotion that Krishna sees. Patram pushram phalam tayam tayome bhakti panasyati taraham bhakti uparitam asnami prayatat manaha. So he's taking the devotion and not what is being offered. Okay, so thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.